Admiral Kithara stood on the command bridge of the Eternal Dominion, her scaled hands clasped behind her back as she gazed out at the sprawling industrial complex of Nexus Prime. The massive orbital shipyard stretched for thousands of kilometers, their skeletal frameworks birthing the next generation of Imperial dreadnoughts. 3,000 years of conquest had built this empire, and 3,000 more would see it expand to every corner of the universe. The Vaeltharian Empire was perfection made manifest. 17 species knelt before their superiority, their homeworlds transformed into resource farms and manufacturing centers. The weak served the strong, as nature intended. Order through dominion, peace through submission. Admiral, her communications officer called out, his voice tight with confusion. We're detecting an anomalous energy signature in Sector 77 Alpha. Kithara's golden eyes narrowed. Nothing should be in that sector except automated mining platforms. Elaborate, Commander Vex. It's substantial, Admiral. The signature appeared without warning 30 seconds ago. No hyperspace distortion, no quantum wake. It simply materialized. Impossible. 3 millennia of technological advancement had taught the Empire that nothing could breach their sensor networks undetected. Every civilized species used predictable faster-than-light methods that left clear signatures. The Empire's dominance partly rested on their ability to detect and intercept any vessel long before it posed a threat. Visual confirmation, Kithara commanded. The main display shimmered, then resolved into a view of Sector 77 Alpha. Where empty space had existed moment before, a vessel now hung in the void. Kithara's breath caught in her throat. The ship was unlike anything in Imperial records. Roughly 2 kilometers in length, its hull was a matte black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange angle protrusions jutted from its surface, and peculiar energy patterns danced along its edges like controlled lightning. Most unsettling of all, it bore no identification markers, no Imperial registration, no indication of origin. "Scan it," Kithara ordered, her voice steady despite the unease crawling up her spine. "Attempting scan now, Admiral." Commander Vex worked frantically at his console. "This is unusual. The ship's hull is deflecting our deep scans. I'm reading massive energy outputs, but I can't determine the source. Power levels are... Admiral, this is impossible. The readings suggest energy generation beyond anything in our databases. Open a channel. All frequencies. Channel open, Admiral." Kithara stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of 3,000 years of Imperial dominance. "Unknown vessel, you have entered sovereign Vaeltharian space without authorization. Identify yourself immediately and prepare to be boarded for inspection. Failure to comply will result in immediate destruction." Silence stretched across the void. The mysterious ship hung motionless, offering no response to their demands. "Admiral," the tactical officer spoke up, her voice edged with worry. "I'm detecting weapons systems activating across the shipyards. The station commanders are requesting permission to engage." "Negative. We will handle this ourselves." Kithara turned to her weapons officer. "Target their engines. Minimum force. I want that ship intact for study." "Targeting systems locked, Admiral. Firing." Twin beams of concentrated plasma lanced out from the Eternal Dominion, enough firepower to cripple any known vessel. The beam struck the unknown ship's rear section, where logic dictated the engines would be located. The energy simply dissipated against the hull like water against stone. "What?" Kithara stared at the display in disbelief. "Commander Vex, did our weapons malfunction?" "Negative, Admiral. Direct hits confirmed. The target appears to have absorbed our plasma completely. I'm detecting no damage whatsoever." For the first time in her military career, Admiral Kithara felt genuine fear. No known material could simply absorb plasma fire of that magnitude. Even Imperial dreadnought armor would show scorch marks. "All batteries, maximum power. Concentrate fire on." Her order died as the unknown ship suddenly moved. Not the gradual acceleration of conventional drives, but an instantaneous translation from stationary to impossible velocity. In the span of a heartbeat, it closed the distance between them from 50,000 kilometers to 500. Alarm shrieked across the bridge. "Admiral, the unknown vessel is..." The communication cut off as every system on the Eternal Dominion died simultaneously. Bridge lighting failed. Displays went dark, and the gentle hum of life support systems fell silent. In the absolute darkness, Kithara heard only her own rapid breathing and the panicked whispers of her crew. Emergency power kicked in after what felt like an eternity, bathing the bridge in hellish red light. Half the control station sparked with electrical failures. Commander Vex Panel was completely dead, his face pale with shock. "Report!" Kithara barked. "Unknown energy pulse. Admiral. It disabled our primary systems without causing permanent damage. We're running on emergency power only." On the main display, now flickering and distorted, the alien vessel hung directly in front of them. At this distance, Kithara could make out details that chilled her blood. The ship's surface wasn't simply black. It seemed to move, like liquid metal flowing in patterns too complex for her mind to follow. Those angular protrusions pulsed with soft blue light, and now she could see they weren't random decorations but sophisticated equipment whose purpose she couldn't begin to guess. "Admiral," her communications officer whispered, "we're receiving a transmission." On screen, the main display cleared, showing not the bridge of the alien vessel, but something far more disturbing. The image was of a single figure standing in what appeared to be a memorial chamber. Thousands of holographic displays surrounded the figure, each showing the image of a different world. As Kithara watched, she realized with growing horror that she recognized some of those worlds. They were planets the Empire had conquered and strip-mined over the centuries. Dead worlds. Lifeless rocks where civilizations had once thrived. The figure stepped forward into clearer view, and Kithara's blood turned to ice. It was bipedal, roughly humanoid in shape, but with features that spoke of a species she had thought extinct for 3 centuries. Pale skin, dark hair, eyes that burned with an intensity that transcended mere anger. The species that had once called themselves human. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Remnant Fleet," the figure spoke, her voice carrying across the void with perfect clarity. Each word was pronounced with careful precision, as if she were speaking a language she had learned specifically for this moment. "You know what you did to my people. You know what you did to my world. Today, that debt comes to you." Admiral Kithara's claws unconsciously extended as memories flooded back. The human homeworld, Earth, they had called it, had been one of the Empire's earlier conquests. The species had shown promise initially, their rapid technological advancement catching Imperial attention. But they had refused to submit, choosing to fight even when the outcome was inevitable. The siege had lasted 2 years. Human ships, primitive by Imperial standards, had thrown themselves against the invasion fleet with suicidal determination. Their planet's surface had been scorched from orbit, their colonies scattered to the solar winds. The survivors had been relocated to labor camps on distant worlds, where they had gradually died out over the following centuries. Also, the Empire had believed. "Impossible," Kithara whispered. "Your species was eliminated 3 centuries ago. We have the records." Captain Chen's expression never changed, but something flickered behind her eyes, a pain so deep it had transformed into something harder than diamond. "You destroyed our worlds. You scattered our people across the galaxy like dust. You thought you had broken us completely." She paused, her gaze shifting to one of the holographic displays showing a blue-green world that was now nothing but scorched rock. "You were wrong." "Even if survivors existed," Kithara said, forcing confidence into her voice, "you cannot seriously believe that one ship can threaten the might of the Vaeltharian Empire. We command 17 star systems. Our fleets number in the thousands." "Your fleets?" Chen nodded slowly. "Yes, let's discuss your fleets." The transmission changed, showing not the memorial chamber but what appeared to be the human ship's tactical display. Kithara's heart nearly stopped. The display showed not just Nexus Prime and the surrounding system, but a 3-dimensional map extending for hundreds of light-years in every direction. Every Imperial fleet position was marked with perfect accuracy, including classified patrol routes and hidden supply depots that should have been impossible for any outsider to know. "How?" Kithara began. "We've been watching," Chen interrupted. "For 3 centuries, we've been watching, learning, preparing. Every move your empire made, every expansion, every conquest, we recorded it all. We studied your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. We became the shadows between your stars, the whispers in your data streams. Commander Vex managed to restore partial power to his station. Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy spikes from the human vessel. Whatever they are planning. What we're planning, Chen continued as if she could hear their conversation, is justice, not revenge. Justice. The methodical, calculated repayment of every atrocity your empire has committed. The tactical display zoomed in on the Nexus Prime system, showing the positions of all Imperial vessels. Over 300 ships in total, from patrol corvettes to massive battlecruisers. The largest concentration of military might in the galaxy, assembled here to protect the Empire's most important shipyards. You see these. Chen gestured to the display. Each ship represents thousands of lives under your command. Soldiers who believe they serve a noble cause, engineers who build your war machines, officers who enforce your will across the galaxy. Her voice grew softer, almost gentle. They don't deserve to die for your crimes. But they will, unless you listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Kythera felt sweat beading on her scaled skin. What do you want? I want you to send a message to every Imperial fleet, every governor, every admiral across your 17 systems. Tell them that humanity has returned. Tell them that Captain Sarah Chen of the vessel Retribution has come to collect a debt 3 centuries in the making. And then you will order the immediate evacuation of all Imperial personnel from this system. Every ship, every station, every living being under Imperial authority has exactly 1 hour to reach minimum safe distance. Safe distance from what? Chen's smile was terrible to behold. From what happens when 300 years of human ingenuity meets 300 years of human rage. You're insane if you think. Admiral. Commander Vex interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm detecting new contacts. Multiple signatures appearing throughout the system. What? Kythera spun toward the tactical display. Her blood turned to ice as she saw them, dozens of energy signatures materializing from seemingly empty space. Not new ships arriving, but ships that had already been there, hidden by technology that made them invisible to even the Empire's most advanced sensors. Ghost ships, she breathed. Not ghosts, Chen corrected. Survivors. Every one of these vessels carries the descendants of humans your empire thought it had destroyed. We've spent 3 centuries building this fleet, developing technology you can't imagine, preparing for this moment. The hidden ships began moving into attack positions with mechanical precision. Unlike the chaotic formations typically used by inferior species, these vessels moved as a single organism, each ship perfectly coordinated with all others. Their technology was clearly beyond anything the Empire possessed. Stealth systems that could hide entire fleets, energy signatures that defied conventional physics, hull materials that absorbed plasma fire like sunlight. Admiral, her weapons officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. I count 4 to 7 vessels, all unknown configurations. Power readings are... Admiral, these readings can't be accurate. Each ship is showing energy output equivalent to an Imperial dreadnought. 58 minutes remaining, Chen announced calmly. I suggest you begin your evacuation immediately. Kythera's mind raced through possibilities. Even with 48 human ships, the Imperial forces still held numerical superiority. Her own dreadnought alone could match any 2 enemy vessels, and combined firepower the Nexus Prime defense fleet should be enough to overwhelm any attacking force. All Imperial vessels, she broadcast on the fleet-wide channel, assume attack formation. Prepare to engage unknown hostiles. This is Admiral Kythera of the Eternal Dominion. We will not be intimidated by inferior species playing with stolen technology. The response was immediate. Throughout the system, Imperial ships powered up their weapons and began moving into battle formations that had served the Empire for 3 millennia. The sight should have been reassuring. The awesome spectacle of Imperial might preparing to crush another upstart species. Instead, Kythera felt only dread as she watched the human ships adjust their positions in response. They moved with an efficiency that spoke of perfect communication and coordination, each vessel finding the optimal position to maximize their combined firepower while minimizing Imperial advantages. 57 minutes, Chen said, her image still displayed on the main screen. Admiral, I'm giving you this chance because the soldiers under your command don't deserve to die horribly for crimes they didn't personally commit. But understand this, my mercy has limits. If you choose to fight, I will demonstrate exactly what 3 centuries of human innovation can accomplish when motivated by 3 centuries of grief. We are the Vaeltharian Empire. Kythera snarled, her composure finally breaking. We have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. We will not be threatened by a handful of survivors from a dead civilization. Chen's expression grew infinitely sad. Then you've made your choice. She turned away from the camera, addressing someone off-screen. All vessels, prepare to demonstrate human ingenuity. Target priority is infrastructure preservation. We'll need those shipyards intact for reconstruction efforts. Enemy personnel survival is secondary to mission objectives. 56 minutes and counting. Came a new voice from the transmission, another human, speaking with cold professionalism. All ships report ready for engagement. Then let's show them what dead civilizations can accomplish, Chen said quietly. Begin Operation Reckoning. The first indication that everything had changed forever came not from the human ships, but from the eternal Dominion itself. Every system that had been struggling on emergency power suddenly surged back to full capacity, and then beyond. The lights didn't just return. They blazed with intensity that forced the crew to shield their eyes. Every display screen became crystal clear, showing data readouts that moved too fast for Vaeltharian minds to process. Admiral, Commander Vex called out, his voice filled with disbelief. They are not jamming our systems. They're enhancing them. Our computers are running at processing speeds I didn't know were possible. What? Before Kythera could demand an explanation, the main tactical display lit up with information that should have been impossible to obtain. The positions, armor thickness, weapon loadouts, and shield frequencies of every Imperial ship in the system appeared in perfect detail. More disturbing still, projected flight paths showed exactly where each vessel would be in the next several minutes, calculated with mathematical precision that accounted for variables the Imperial Navy didn't even measure. They've infiltrated our entire network, Vex whispered. Not just accessing our data, they're improving our systems while they do it. Admiral, I don't think this is an attack. I think it's a demonstration. On the display, 48 human vessels began their assault. But what followed wasn't a battle in any sense that the Imperial Navy understood. It was a surgical procedure performed on a galactic scale. The first Imperial vessel to die was the battle cruiser Vaeltharian Pride. The ship's captain, Admiral Nexus, had positioned his vessel to lead the counterattack, its massive guns charging for a full-power barrage against the nearest human ship. The Pride represented the pinnacle of Imperial engineering, 2 kilometers of armored death designed to crack planets and break the will of entire species. It lasted exactly 17 seconds. 3 human vessels approached the Pride from different angles, their movements so coordinated they might have been controlled by a single mind. No communication passed between them that Imperial sensors could detect, yet they acted with perfect synchronization. The first ship fired what appeared to be a simple energy beam, a weapon that registered as less powerful than a civilian mining laser. The beam struck the Pride's primary armor belt and did nothing visible. The Imperial crew had a moment to feel relief before they realized the beam wasn't trying to damage their ship. Instead, it was rewriting the molecular structure of their hull, turning impenetrable battle armor into something with the consistency of wet paper. The second human ship fired what the Imperial sensors classified as a physical projectile, a solid mass traveling at significant but not extraordinary velocity. The projectile struck the weakened section of hull and passed through the battle cruiser like a knife through smoke. Behind it trailed a field effect that caused every Imperial weapon to discharge harmlessly into space, their targeting system suddenly convinced that empty vacuum was their intended target. The third human ship did nothing at all until the Pride was completely defenseless. Then it released what could only be described as suggestion, an electromagnetic pulse so precisely calibrated that it convinced every power system on the Imperial vessel to shut down safely and completely. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply convinced that continuing to function was no longer necessary. The Vaeltharian Pride went dark and began to drift, its crew alive but completely helpless. The entire engagement had taken less time than most Imperial officers needed to identify a target. Impossible, Admiral Kythera breathed, watching the tactical display update in real time. Our sensors must be malfunctioning. No weapon can rewrite armor composition at the molecular level. Admiral, her science officer reported, His voice hollow with shock. "The sensors are functioning perfectly. I'm detecting massive changes in the Pride's hull composition. Whatever that beam was, it actually restructured the ship's armor at the atomic level. The physics involved. Admiral, I don't understand how this is possible." Around the system, the pattern repeated with terrifying consistency. Imperial ships that had never known defeat found themselves outmatched by technology that operated on principles as science couldn't explain. Vessels that should have been able to slug it out with dreadnoughts were disabled with surgical precision, their crews left alive but completely helpless. The human ships moved through the Imperial formation like dancers performing a choreographed routine. Every movement was calculated for maximum effect with minimum energy expenditure. They wasted nothing. No unnecessary shots, no wasted motion, no random destruction. Each Imperial vessel was neutralized with exactly the amount of force required, no more and no less. "Admiral," Commander Vex reported, his voice growing more strained with each update, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Imperial vessels. Their commanding officers are requesting permission to abandon ship." "Denied. We are the Imperial Navy. We do not surrender to inferior species." "Admiral," the communications officer interrupted, "Captain Chen is requesting to speak with you again." On screen, Chen's image reappeared, but now she was standing on what appeared to be the bridge of her vessel. Behind her, Kithara could see crew members working at stations that seemed to blend technology with something approaching art. The display showed information in three-dimensional projections that moved and shifted like living things, and the crew interacted with their equipment through gestures that looked more like conducting an orchestra than operating machinery. "Admiral," Chen said, her voice calm despite the chaos erupting around them, "I'm going to explain something that your empire has never understood. You build your ships to destroy. You design your weapons to kill. You train your officers to conquer. But we have spent 3 centuries learning to create." As if to demonstrate her point, one of the human vessels approached an Imperial destroyer that had been disabled in the initial assault. Instead of finishing off the helpless ship, the human vessel extended what appeared to be mechanical appendages that began working on the destroyer's hull. Within minutes, the Imperial ship's power systems came back online, not repaired, but upgraded. Its engines, which had been offline for decades due to chronic maintenance issues, began functioning at peak efficiency. "You're repairing our ships?" Kithara asked, incredulous. "We're improving them," Chen corrected. "Your crews will live. Your vessels will function better than they did when they were first constructed. But they will never again serve the Empire's agenda of conquest and oppression." "What are you doing to them?" "We're giving them a choice. Every Imperial crew member in this system now has access to information their government has kept hidden for 3,000 years. They can see the true history of every world their empire has conquered, every species and military has enslaved, every atrocity committed in the name of order and progress." On the tactical display, Kithara watched in horror as Imperial ships throughout the system began broadcasting surrender signals. Not distress calls or requests for assistance, but formal announcements of withdrawal from Imperial service. Ship after ship declared their intention to lay down arms and request asylum from the human fleet. "You're turning our own people against us," Kithara snarled. "We're showing them the truth," Chen replied. "The choice is theirs to make, just as the choice is now yours, Admiral. You can continue to fight a battle you cannot win, sending more of your people to their death for a cause that cannot be defended. Or you can listen to what I'm really offering. Which is an end to the age of empires. A chance for every species in this galaxy to determine their own fate without fear of conquest or oppression. Your people included, Admiral. The Vaeltharian species doesn't have to die for the crimes of the Vaeltharian Empire." Kithara looked around her bridge at crew members who had served with distinction for decades. They were all staring at the tactical display, watching their fleet, the greatest concentration of military power in the galaxy, being systematically dismantled by technology they couldn't understand or counter. "And if I refuse?" Chen's expression grew infinitely sad. "Then you'll discover what 3 centuries of human innovation can accomplish when mercy is no longer an option." Admiral Kithara's response died in her throat as the tactical display suddenly expanded, showing not just the Nexus Prime system but the entire galactic sector. What she saw there shattered every assumption she had held about human capabilities and Imperial security. The display revealed human fleets positioned throughout Imperial space. Not just a handful of ships at Nexus Prime, but thousands of vessels lurking in the dark between stars. They were everywhere, hidden near major trade routes, positioned outside capital systems, waiting in the void near every significant Imperial installation. The scope of the operation was staggering. This wasn't a desperate last stand by survivors. This was a coordinated military campaign 3 centuries in the making. Impossible, Kithara whispered. Our long-range sensors would have detected. Your sensors detect what we allow them to detect, Chen interrupted. Admiral, your empire has spent 3,000 years believing that superior firepower equals superior civilization. You never considered that there might be other paths to power. While you built bigger guns and heavier armor, we learned to move between dimensions. While you focused on conquest, we mastered creation. While you demanded submission, we achieved transcendence. To demonstrate her point, Chen gestured to someone off-screen. The space around Nexus Prime suddenly filled with structures that definitely hadn't been there moments before. Massive installations materialized from apparent nothingness, manufacturing complexes, energy collection arrays, and what appeared to be entire cities floating in the void. They were beautiful in a way that Imperial architecture never was, flowing organic shapes that seemed grown rather than built. These stations have been here for 60 years, Chen explained. Your people have flown past them countless times without seeing them. We've been studying your technology, your culture, your psychology. We know more about the Vaeltharian Empire than you do. Commander Vex worked frantically at his station, trying to make sense of the sensor data. Admiral, the energy signatures from these installations are beyond anything in our databases. I'm reading power generation that should require multiple stars to sustain. 0-point energy extraction, Chen said casually, as if discussing the weather. We learned to tap directly into the quantum foam that underlies reality. Unlimited power, unlimited resources, unlimited possibilities. Your empire strip mines planets of materials we can create from empty space. Kithara felt the foundations of her worldview crumbling. The Empire's dominance rested on controlling resources and commanding superior technology. If humans could create matter and energy from nothingness, then every Imperial advantage became meaningless. What do you want? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I want you to understand what's about to happen, Chen replied. This isn't a battle, Admiral. This is an intervention. Your empire has been a cancer on this galaxy for 3 millennia, consuming everything in its path and calling that consumption progress. Today, that cancer is being removed. The display changed again, showing real-time footage from Imperial worlds throughout the sector. On each planet, massive structures were rising from the ground, not built, but grown like living things. These weren't weapons or military installations, but something far more threatening to Imperial power: infrastructure. Roads, hospitals, schools, manufacturing centers, all appearing simultaneously across 17 star systems. We're giving every conquered species the tools they need to build their own civilizations, Chen explained. Not the crude technology your empire uses to maintain control, but true advancement. Clean energy, matter conversion, faster-than-light communication that doesn't require massive relay stations. Everything they need to be truly free. You're starting a galactic civil war, Kithara accused. We're ending one that's lasted 3,000 years, Chen corrected. The war your empire declared on every other species in the galaxy when you decided that might makes right. The difference is that now, for the first time, the conquered have the tools to fight back effectively. On the tactical display, Kithara watched the remaining ships continue to surrender or simply shut down their weapons. The crews weren't being coerced, they were being educated. Somehow, the humans were transmitting complete historical records directly to every Imperial vessel, showing the true cost of Imperial expansion. The millions of species that had been enslaved or exterminated. The worlds that had been strip-mined into lifeless rocks. The civilizations that had been erased from history. Stop this, Kithara said, though she wasn't sure if she was giving an order or making a plea. Your people are dead. Your worlds are gone. Revenge won't bring them back. This isn't revenge, Chen replied, her voice growing harder. Revenge would be visiting upon your species exactly what you visited upon ours. Your worlds burned, your people scattered, your civilization reduced to scattered refugees struggling to survive in hostile space. But we're not you, Admiral. We don't believe that suffering justifies more suffering. Then what? What we're doing is justice. Every imperial officer, every government official, every person who has benefited from 3 millennia of oppression will face trial for their crimes. Not imperial justice, where the strong dictate terms to the weak, but true justice where actions have consequences regardless of rank or species. The transmission changed again, showing what appeared to be a massive space station unlike anything in Imperial records. The structure was clearly artificial but possessed an organic beauty that made Imperial architecture look crude by comparison. Thousands of beings moved through its corridors, not just humans, but representatives of every species the Empire had ever conquered. "This is Judgment Station," Chen announced. "Every person who has committed crimes in the name of Imperial expansion will stand before a tribunal composed of their victims. Those found guilty will face punishment appropriate to their crimes. Those who were merely following orders without committing atrocities themselves will be offered the chance to help rebuild what their empire destroyed. And those who refuse..." Chen's expression became unreadable. "There will be no refusal, Admiral. Every Imperial world now has a human installation, providing its population with complete freedom of choice. They can continue to support an empire built on oppression, or they can join the galactic community as equals. But they cannot choose to remain ignorant of what their empire has done." The implications hit Kithara like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just prepared militarily for this moment. They had prepared socially, politically, economically. They were offering every Imperial citizen an alternative to the only system they had ever known. Given genuine choice and complete information, how many would choose to continue supporting conquest and oppression? "Admiral," Commander Vex reported, his voice hollow, "I'm receiving reports from across the Empire. Every major world is reporting the appearance of human installations. The populations are being offered relocation to independent worlds, advanced technology, and, Admiral, they are being offered something we never gave them. Which is hope. Hope for something better than endless expansion and conquest." Kithara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 3,000 years of history pressing down on her. The empire she had served her entire life, the civilization she had believed represented the pinnacle of galactic achievement, was collapsing not through military defeat, but through the simple act of offering people a better alternative. "How long have you been planning this?" she asked. 307 years, 4 months, 16 days, Chen replied without hesitation. "Every day since the last human colony fell to Imperial forces. Every moment since we swore that no other species would suffer as we had suffered. And now comes the hard part," Chen said, her voice growing softer. "Building something better from the ashes of what came before. It will take generations, Admiral, longer than any of us will live to see completed. But it will be worth it, because for the first time in galactic history, every species will have the right to determine their own destiny." Kithara opened her eyes and looked around her bridge one final time. Her crew were all staring at her, waiting for orders that she suddenly realized she was no longer qualified to give. The empire they had served no longer existed. The war they had been fighting was already over. "What happens to us?" she asked. Chen's smile held no trace of cruelty, only infinite sadness for what might have been. "That depends entirely on what you choose to do next." Chen's smile held no trace of cruelty, only infinite sadness for what might have been. "That depends entirely on what you choose to do next." 6 months later, Admiral Kithara stood in a place that shouldn't have existed, a garden floating in the void of space, sustained by technology that turned impossible into inevitable. The Human Rehabilitation Center orbited what had once been Nexus Prime, but the massive industrial complex had been transformed into something completely different. Where ugly factories had once birthed instruments of war, elegant spires now reached toward the stars, their surfaces alive with bioluminescent patterns that pulse in rhythm with some cosmic heartbeat. She was no longer Admiral Kithara. That title belonged to a dead empire and a discredited philosophy. Hey, she was simply Kithara, one of thousands of former Imperial personnel trying to understand how to exist in a galaxy where strength didn't automatically confer the right to rule. The transformation hadn't been violent. That was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of humanity's return, their absolute refusal to respond to 3 millennia of oppression with the kind of systematic brutality that the Empire would have employed. Instead, they had done something far more revolutionary. They had made imperial rule irrelevant by offering everyone something better. The psychological assessments are complete, Dr. Elena Vasquez said, approaching through the garden with a data pad in her hands. The human psychologist had been working with former imperial officers for months, helping them process the cognitive dissonance of discovering that everything they had believed about civilization and progress had been fundamentally wrong. And Kythera asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer, "You're ready for assignment, if you want it. Your knowledge of imperial logistics systems will be invaluable in the reconstruction efforts on Kalari's Prime. The survivors there are struggling to rebuild their agricultural infrastructure after 2 centuries of strip mining." Kythera looked out at the stars, where human ships moved in patterns that still seemed more like choreography than military formations. Each vessel carried supplies, technology, and expertise to worlds that were learning how to govern themselves for the first time in millennia. The scale of the humanitarian effort was staggering, entire civilizations being lifted from subsistence to abundance in a matter of months. "What happened to Captain Chen?" Kythera asked. Dr. Vasquez followed her gaze to the stars. "She's out there somewhere, probably establishing first contact with some species that's been hiding in the galactic rim for the past few thousand years. The humans found 17 civilizations that went into deep isolation when the Empire began expanding. They're all coming back now, sharing technologies and cultures that we never knew existed." "She could have destroyed us all," Kythera said quietly. "Her people had the power to reduce every imperial world to ash. Why didn't they?" "Because that's not who they are," Dr. Vasquez replied. 3 centuries of suffering didn't make them into monsters. It taught them the value of every life. They remembered what they were fighting for, not just what they were fighting against. Through the garden's transparent walls, Kythera could see one of the memorial installations that humans had built throughout former imperial space. This one honored the Kalarian species, the gentle, artistic people whose home world had been strip-mined for rare minerals when Kythera was still a junior officer. She had been there, had watched from orbit as the planet's surface was carved away to feed the Empire's endless hunger for resources. The memorial didn't show accusations or demand retribution. Instead, it displayed the beauty that had been lost, Kalarian art, music, poetry, philosophy. It celebrated what the species had contributed to galactic civilization before the Empire had reduced them to slave labor. Many of the former imperial personnel who saw these memorials wept openly, finally understanding what their glorious expansion had actually cost. "I was there when Kalari's fell," Kythera admitted. "I was the one who coordinated the orbital bombardment patterns to maximize mineral extraction efficiency. I calculated how to strip mine their world with minimum energy expenditure. And now you want to help them rebuild. I don't know if I have that right." Dr. Vasquez sat down beside her on the garden bench, her expression thoughtful. "Kythera, I worked with hundreds of former Imperial personnel over the past 6 months. Do you know what the most dangerous ones have in common?" "No. They are the ones who refuse to acknowledge what they've done. They cling to justifications about Imperial necessity and the burden of bringing order to chaos. But you see clearly what happened and why it was wrong. That clarity is exactly what the reconstruction efforts need. The Kalarians will never trust me. Maybe not at first, but trust can be earned through actions, through years of dedicated service to causes larger than yourself. The humans proved that. They spent 3 centuries earning the right to judge the Empire by becoming something better than what destroyed them." Kythera stood and walked to the memorial display, placing her scale hand against the transparent surface. Images of Kalarian cities cycled past, graceful architecture that had grown like coral from the planet's surface, art galleries that had showcased the spiritual insights of a species naturally attuned to cosmic rhythms, libraries containing philosophical works that had taken millennia to develop. All gone now, reduced to industrial slag to feed the Empire's war machine. "There's something else," Dr. Vasquez said quietly. "The humans are planning to attempt something unprecedented. They want to restore some of the destroyed worlds." "Restore them how?" "Planetary resurrection, using quantum archaeology to recover the atomic patterns of destroyed ecosystems, then rebuilding them from the subatomic level up." It's theoretical. They've never tried anything on such a scale. But if it works, Kalaris could bloom again. Not just Kalaris. Dozens of worlds. Maybe hundreds. The humans are offering former Imperial personnel the chance to spend their lives undoing the damage their empire caused. It won't bring back the dead, but it might give their descendants a future worth living. Kithara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of possibility. For the first time since humanity's return, she experienced something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. Not the grim satisfaction of conquest or the empty pride of dominance, but genuine hope for something better than what had come before. "When do we start?" she asked. "Tomorrow," Dr. Vasquez replied. The first restoration ship leaves the Kalaris at dawn. As they walked back through the garden toward the residential areas, Kithara looked up at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, Captain Sarah Chen was probably making contact with another hidden civilization, offering them the same choice she had offered the Empire: join the galactic community as equals, or remain isolated until they were ready to embrace something larger than themselves. The age of empires was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And for the first time in her life, former Admiral Kithara felt like she was on the right side of history. 3 centuries of human suffering had not produced a species consumed by hatred and revenge. Instead, it had forged beings capable of transformation on a galactic scale, not through conquest, but through the simple revolutionary act of proving that there was a better way to live. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, Kithara realized, was exactly what it needed. A human warship emerged out of nowhere. The Empire fought back. It didn't matter.